We've seen a lot since Obama's taken office of people on the left mocking, laughing, criticizing anyone who says that the types of policies that this administration is proposing trend towards socialism, and that's the direction that the country would be headed if they had their way. When you look at the types of decisions that they are making in Washington right now, do you agree with that, or do you think that we're all just, cynical and crazy for thinking that there might be some socialism involved in what's going on with this administration?
Well, I do know from public opinion polling that I think an overwhelming majority of Republicans feel exactly the way I do. I think it's 73% say that Obama is a socialist, and I certainly believe that. I think in its most mild version, Obama is an adherent to the philosophy of John Rawls. Rawls wrote a book called Theory of Justice. And basically, it's an argument that says we need to have less inequality in our society and more affirmative action programs, and that if people would just imagine what sort of society they would like without knowing which position they would hold within that future society,
right,
that they would pick a socialized society that had very small variations in income inequality. So I think that's why I think my explanation explains why Barack Obama is not really tacking to the center. It explains his closeness to Alice Palmer and
right,
Bill Ayers, and it also explains why he's kind of hostile to the people making over $250,000 a year. And why even his own supporters were shocked when he was interviewed by Bloomberg, saying that he thought maybe it was okay for some of these investment bankers to have their high bonuses. After all, and it's funny, and he did that I think the day after the story hit by Ron Kessler about
right,
me talking about his college year Marxism. I feel like he did that on purpose because he knew that story was out there.
It was, yeah.
And so he wanted to give himself a little, pro-capitalist, pro-baseball player salary cover. I'm sorry. Am I answering your question?
Yeah. No, you totally are. And I was going to before we move on from John Rawls, since we don't often have political science philosopher for grant writers on the show. How does that fit into the? I was trying to go back to my own political philosophy classes at Wheaton College. So that was part of what John Rawls called his veil of ignorance? Exactly.
What you ought to do is design a society from what's called the original position,
right,
which would be not knowing whether you were going to be born rich or poor or intelligent or less intelligent,
right,
black or white, and then design the society from that perspective.
Right.
And I think this is actually intellectually significant because Barack Obama asserts that his favorite professor at Occidental College was a guy named Roger Boucher. And I taught with Boucher while I was on the faculty at Williams College in Massachusetts. I was teaching American government classes, and Boucher was there on a one-year sabbatical teaching political theory. And I know for a fact that Boucher was a socialist when I met him in the late 80s, and that he was an ardent supporter of John Rawls' theory. And I just saw that Occidental College was talking about how Professor Boucher was in the Oval Office with President Obama last year. I think it was August of last year. So apparently they're still close and they're still communicating. So I'm willing to testify under oath that Boucher is a socialist and that he's obviously still close with Barack Obama.
We have people asking in chat, there's been a lot of discussion as to whether, with the change in direction that Obama's trying to take the country, if he's the man behind that evolution or revolution, or if he's just the face of it, and there are a lot of people behind him who, for years really want to see the country change in direction. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I was most impressed by a poll which showed, I think it was over 53% of Democrats say that they have a positive view of socialism. And that's certainly my understanding. I think there's actually a pretty strong, it's the same group that Obama used for his political support when he started his political career in Chicago. He had a lot of Chicago University professors who were left-wing, and I'm sure a lot of Marxists in the community. And I think people underestimate how many folks are out there with those beliefs. And I think there's also a tendency among conservatives to think that these folks aren't sincere, that somehow their socialist convictions are somehow not real to
right.
them, or just some sort of facade. And I have the same argument with political scientists who don't think religious belief is a important independent variable in our analysis as well. So I think people are actually a lot more controlled by their ideologies than I think your regular man on the street might suspect.
Right. I have grappled with this a lot on our show since over the last couple of years, even before the election, during the transition, and since, with trying to decide what kind of President Barack Obama would be if he had, plopped down in Chicago, encountered some of these leftist groups, and based on his upbringing and his college experience, gravitated toward them and used that as a base of power to get elected. But that as a very ambitious young man, and one who even early on was saying that he might run for president someday, that once you get to be a senator, once you get to be president, that was he the kind of guy that would be like, okay, well, this is pretty darn cool. I can't totally turn my back on the people that brought me along, so I'm gonna play the game and articulate the vision in sort of not in an all-out way, but say I'm going to pay some lip service to this, but that he would track toward the center as a way of ensuring his reelection, and that he gets the wonderful experience of 2 terms, traversing the world in Air Force One. Or on the other hand, was his earliest days, the influence of his grandparents and his mother and the places and ways that he was raised, and those dominant influences in his early life. Did he come to this and into his adult years with a really deep sense of conviction and passionate commitment to these ideals that would make sense when he now has at least once or twice been quoted as saying he'd rather be a one-term president than sell out on his principles to get to be a 2-term president? And I've tried to look for insights into that, but this is why I was really interested in your blog posting and the video that you did. Because in a way, it points towards the latter. It points to the idea of somebody who was through all stages of his life deeply committed to the ideas, deeply committed to the causes and people around him that shared those beliefs, and might indicate that he might be indeed that kind of a president that is going to not to compromise on these things.